This is the Louie Tee Network.
In the lab room.
10 minutes or less. Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Welcome, you are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the program, 10 minutes or less, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In those hideous new uniforms. Clock! Let's go! So, season rewind for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A tumultuous 2013 season starts with an 0-8 record to start out the season. A nasty Greg Schiano, Josh Freeman spat that ends in Freeman being released by the club. And it just was a mess. Really ate away at this franchise. I thought Greg Schiano was going to be fired right there on the spot. But he was allowed to. And we know the Glazers are very methodical in their approach. They don't make a lot of knee-jerk decisions and have reactions to things. And so even though it was bad in Tampa last year, and probably the lowest it's been in Tampa Bay in a long time, they allowed that situation to ride on out, finish out the season, and then they went about trying to fix this franchise. And so after the 0-8 start, you're thinking to yourself, this Bucs team is terrible. And even though they were in-ball games, I thought that first game of the season and them losing to the Jets on the road, that was a game that they had to win. And the Levante David personal foul penalty cost them that game. And that was a tough one to swallow, because if they win this game against the Jets, I think your season is vastly different. It's a different outcome. But as the losses start to mount and you look up at the standings and you don't have a win to your name, psychologically it starts to weigh on you. And I think that loss against the Jets in week 1, a game that you should have won, turned out to be your undoing in 2013. After the 0-8 start, however, somehow, some way, the Bucs managed to win 4 out of their next 5. And it really was the lone bright spot in a very dark and grim season for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization. A lot of injuries to this roster. A lot of guys were missing in action. You discovered some other gems along the way, though. But after that 4 out of 5 stretch where you won and got on the board, you proceeded to lose 3 straight and finish up the season at 4-12. So the Buccaneers had a very, very rough season. They're glad that's behind them. Now they can move forward. You fast forward to the 2014 offseason. They immediately get rid of Greg Schiano, and that was the right thing to do. Thought that he was a guy that had a lot of controversy surrounding him in this organization with some of the things that were going on behind the scenes. And nobody was a fan of Greg Schiano. It seems like around the organization, ex-players really didn't like him at all. And so it just seemed like he had wore thin on the players and people around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization. And so it was time for him to go. And after they got rid of him, they quickly went and sought after the services of one Lovie Smith. And they brought him in to be the next head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so I feel like the Buccaneers are going in the right direction now with Lovie Smith at the helm as your head man. And so now you need to look at this roster. And it's strange. And we'll talk about this in a second. I don't want to talk about it right now. Let's talk about this Buccaneers team and their free agents in the upcoming offseason. So you look at the list of free agents: Dan Orlovsky, Spencer Lawson, Brian Leonard, Eric Lorig, Tyquan Underwood, Kyle Adams, Nate Bynum, Jamon Meredith, Ted Larson, Daniel Teo Nejum, Gary Gibson, Jonathan Casillas, Adam Hayward, Dakota Watson, Jacob Cutrera, Michael Adams, Danny Gore, Ryan Lindell, Andrew Economos, and restricted free agent Bobby Rainey. So you look at that list of players that I just named, and you already re-signed Bobby Rainey, so you can take him off the list. You already re-signed Anthony Casillas, so you can take him off the list. Or excuse me, Jonathan Casillas. So you can go ahead and take him off the list as well. And so what that means to me is a guy like Dakota Watson probably not going to be back, because I don't think you bring back both he and Jonathan Casillas. I think you bring back one or the other. They'd elected to bring back Casillas. Thinks he has more upside. I tend to agree with that. So I think you're going in that direction there. A guy that I think you should bring back on this list is Tyquan Underwood. I mean, looking at this list, there's not a lot of guys that I want back on that list if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. But I think Tyquan Underwood is a guy that can help you at the receiver position. I think he's a guy that has blazing speed, can take the top off of a defense. I think it's definitely a guy you want to consider bringing back. If he's not back, you're not going to lose any sleep over him not returning to the organization. But we've done this before. You let him walk away last year, only to go back and get him and bring him back. So I think he's a guy that can help you, and I think he's a guy that should be back in Tampa Bay. Let's go to team needs, because this is where I think it gets interesting for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's not often you will hear me say this of a 4-12 football team, but this is a really talented team, and I really don't think you have any glaring needs. Your first pick, I think it's number 6 or 7 overall in the draft, that's a luxury pick. Believe it or not. And when I say it's a luxury pick, what a luxury pick is a pick that you get to pick whatever player you want, the best player available. You don't have to draft for need right away. You go after whatever is best on the board. And so I look at this Buccaneers team, and of course, if there is a defensive end at the top of this draft available when you select at 6 or 7 or wherever it is you pick in the top 10, then you got to take the defensive end. There's really not much to think about. You really don't need to sit there and mull over the decision. You take a guy that can impact the game from the defensive end position and you move forward. But if that guy isn't there, and there's no one you're in love with, if Khalil Mack isn't there, if Jadeveon Clowney isn't there at number whatever you pick, 6 or 7, then you just take the best player available, whether that's an offensive lineman, a tackle, if it's a safety, a corner, whatever. You just take the best player available. Now, you probably don't need any safety help. So I wouldn't do that if I were you, but you take whatever player tickles your fancy at that. And that's what I mean by a luxury pick. You don't have to select anything in particular in this draft because your roster is pretty well balanced. I mean, you look at all of these guys that you're getting back off of injury, and you say to yourself, wow, you're getting your kicker back. You're getting your receiver, Mike Williams, back. You're getting your running back in Doug Martin back. Doug E. Fresh. You just re-signed Bobby Rainey, so you feel really good about the running back position, and you're getting Mike James back as well. So you got a lot of guys that you can rely on at the running back position. Receiver looks pretty stout, especially if you bring back Tyquan Underwood. You look at tight end, Tim Wright lit it up last year. Offensive line, yeah, you could use some more offensive line help. Jerron Meredith is a free agent. You could bring him back if you like, but I think you could upgrade that guard position. And so, I mean, there are some positions of need. To me, looking at this Buccaneers team, you could use a defensive end, of course. I think that's well publicized and stated. You could use defensive tackle help. Gary Gibson is a free agent. I don't expect him to be back. You could look to bolster that defensive tackle position. I know you spent a pick on Spence last year, but you could do some damage at defensive tackle. And I look at another position, quarterback. Look, do you need to draft a quarterback? Maybe. Do you have to? No. But I don't like Dan Orlovsky, I tell you that much, as a backup. So even if you decide not to draft a quarterback, I still think you need an upgrade at the backup quarterback position. So either way, you need a quarterback. But looking at this roster for Tampa Bay, guard, defensive end, defensive tackle, and quarterback are all your needs, and none of them are glaring. Now, again, defensive end, of all the needs, defensive end is the one that I think you want to attack with aggression in this draft, in free agency. I mean, if you can go out and get a guy like Jared Allen, and there's some ties there between he and Leslie Frazier, if you could go out and get Jared Allen on the market, knock yourself out. That'll be a perfect addition to your defense. And if you want to go out in the draft and get a young guy to groom for later down the road, do it. Do it. That's the flexibility you have when you don't have many glaring needs, and I don't think this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team really has many. So if you're a Bucs fan, you should be elated at where you stand right now. Cap-wise, you're pretty healthy. Draft pick-wise, you've got a full complement. And talent-wise, you got a lot of that on your roster too, and now you got the right man calling the shots in Lovie Smith. Look out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Don't look out for those ugly jerseys, but look out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2014. They've got a really bright future in front of them, and this offseason is where it all begins. So that's going to do it for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 10 minutes. Relax.
10 minutes or less. Like the content? Want more? Sub up.
In the lab room.